What's up everyone, I'm here to show you this. It's called the Glyph. It's made by a company called Satisfye and a team of people called Limit Labs. Here is their soccer mom photo. Thank you for sending me this. But you're not interested in the team that made it. You just want to know, why does this controller have so many buttons? You can make your own controller out of this. So you've got all the buttons that you would need if you were building something like a controller for Smash Ultimate. But in addition to a Smash controller, you can also put these extra plates on them and turn them into other types of controller. This is known as the Split FGC. That's what they're calling it because it's like a leverless controller, but your hands are a little bit further separated apart. By the way, thanks to Limit Labs for sending me this prototype for the purposes of making this review. It's not a full product, of course, so it's not really a review yet. All opinions are my own, and I don't have to send it back after I'm done. Apparently, they've already reached their Kickstarter goal, which means that you can pre-order these for about $260. But what does that actually get you? Well, let's talk about the main features first, which is these changeable faceplates. A regular leverless layout, which you can just place on top like this, and it's super easy to do so. You actually don't need screwdrivers or anything like that. You can just pull it off and it connects on here like magic. This faceplate, which is used for Smash Ultimate. Now, the truth is, I've never used a controller like this for Smash. I'm looking forward to getting into it, but I think it's going to be a bit more involved than just showing you the controller in this first video. So if you're interested in Smash Ultimate, do look forward to a future video coming up. And finally, you also have this absolutely mad full layout, which you can use to customize and make your own perfect layout just for you. So there's obviously a lot of potential for customization with this controller, but how does it actually feel to use in-game? Let's find out. Alright, I have the Glyph controller in front of me and we're playing some Street Fighter 6. I'm first going to be using this. It's the Split FGC layout. You've got left, down, right, and you've got your action buttons over here. Left, down for crouch, right, jump button here. I think I also have a jump button over here. I never used this one. Light punch, medium punch, heavy punch, and then you've got your light kick, medium kick, heavy kick. You also have your L1 and L2 buttons over here, which you can use for your things like drive impact or for the parry, which you can use for drive rush. And as you can see, it's very natural to use because it's what you're already used to if you've used a leverless controller before. Now, the reason this layout itself is particularly interesting is because normally I use a layout which is right in the middle. So all of the buttons are in the middle and your arms kind of come in at this angle like so. But because of the split layout that they're using here, you actually put your hands out to the edges, and this is a little bit closer to what people use when they have a leverless option for Smash Ultimate. If I just take the layout cover off and show you, you can see the layout that would normally be used for games like Smash, where you've got all of the C-stick buttons over here and the tilt controls and arrow controls or whatever it is that you're using for Smash. By having your arms spread out, it could well be a little bit more ergonomic. Plus, you do have jump button options on left and right sides. So this kind of layout is much less common for these leverless controllers because it does make the controller a lot bigger, but it feels really, really good. It also means that the controller is just a little bit wider, so it doesn't fall off your lap or fall in between your legs. The only criticism I do have of this layout is that I'm not a fan of the placement of this button. This is actually not a very natural position for me. Usually I'm hovering my fingers above the buttons or I'm resting them lightly on the buttons, and as a result my hand actually is more like this. And as you can see, if I put my fingers naturally on these buttons, I really would prefer to have a button up here, but you can see it's all the way down here, and so I have to tilt my hand like this, and even so it doesn't really match the angle of the buttons because now I need these buttons over here to be a little bit higher up. So for my natural hand position, I would much prefer a button here, but fortunately with the Glyph I can actually make my own layout, and I can use this button here instead, which is a little bit better, or I can use this button here, which is a little bit better. But as you can see, there's no position here, which is where I would really actually prefer to have a button. But they haven't made the finished product yet, so I will be letting them know that I would much prefer to have a button here in the finished version. Fortunately, I actually got used to it quite quickly because, like I say, I play with my hands hovering over the buttons or lightly resting on the buttons, and so actually I found it no trouble at all to move my thumb over whenever I need to do the jump. Ideally speaking, I would like to have the jump button here so I don't need to keep moving my thumb down. But on that note, we actually have a layout where the jump button is a little bit higher. Let's check that one out next. Remove this layout and let's change the layout now. As you can see, it doesn't really work yet because the buttons are in the wrong place, but it's super easy to put them in the right place using our handy dandy It's not a notebook, it's a pair of tweezers. Now, this was included in the set that I received, and hopefully it will be included in the set that you receive, but in order to remove the buttons and put them in the right place, we need to actually pluck them out of here. And as you can see, these are 3D printed buttons and they feel really nice. They've got a little bit of texture to them, feel all of the benefits of these good mechanical switches. They've got a good bounce to them, and it feels like the weight of these plastic caps is super lightweight, so it's just right. To make the FGC layout, you just need to put these buttons in the way that I'm going to arrange them now. So this is where the buttons are going to be, but now we need to get the switches out, and in order to do that, we'll actually need these tweezers. So we don't need a switch here, but we do need a switch here. I'll just drop that one there. Now, these are just standard MX style key switches. You can slide them in. Presumably, you can put any MX style key switches of your liking if you want tactile switches or clicky switches. What you may think is that these two silver holes here are where you plug these little pins in, but you'd be wrong, because actually these pins go into these tiny, you can't even see them, there are little holes underneath them. So I'm not going to put them in like this, I'm going to put them in like this with the pins on the base, and let's slide them in and just click. So that's all the buttons in place. Now we just need to put the layout cover on top, and again, it's super easy because it's magnetic. So put it on and hey presto, we're now in game. It thinks that we're still in the split FGC layout, but in order to get into the FGC layout, I'm going to press button 3 and 7 at the same time. By the way, there's an instruction manual, don't worry about that. And as you can see, now it has lit up the buttons for the FGC layout. I put the magnetic cover on. This is so much more comfortable. But one thing you can see is that the jump button, it is still a little bit low. Normally, the jump button on a layout like this would be right here. Super, super close, because again, for the natural curve of your fingers when they're in a healthy position, it's going to be like this. If you've mapped out your fingers flat like this, then you may find that the jump button is down like this. But I highly recommend that you avoid playing with your fingers flat like this. Most people who play the piano, they don't play with their fingers flat like this, and it's for a reason, because they wouldn't be playing the piano for very long if they did. Even compared to the kitsune, it's even lower, and I think the kitsune is about as low down as I would prefer to go. So with this, I'd prefer this button to be a little bit higher, but it's okay. And you can see I have no issues doing any of my commands and being able to, jump in, do two combos. So the flexibility of the Glyph is absolutely insane. Being able to go from a completely different layout, which would have cost you another $250 or so, up to $300, $400 for a separate controller. Now with the Glyph, you can just change the layout. You buy one controller, an experiment to find exactly what you want, or if you just prefer to have the split layout for, I don't know, Guilty Gear, but you want the traditional leverless layout for Street Fighter, and then you want to use a completely different customized layout for something like Under Night In-Birth, you've got the flexibility with this one controller, and you don't need to spend $900 on controllers. You just buy the one, which is like $270. Of course, taking all these buttons out in between matches is going to be a pain, so if you do play multiple games, you probably are still better off buying multiple controllers and bringing them around with you. But when you're traveling, sometimes you just don't have that option. You've got limited amounts of luggage that you're allowed to bring on the plane, and these controllers are already pretty big and heavy. You want to protect your back health as well. All things considered, this is going to be fantastic for people who travel. The thing is, if you do want a super customized layout, your options are to use this layout, or maybe go for the split FGC layout, and instead of using this button for the jump over here, you could actually move the jump button up here instead and just use one of the smaller buttons, which we are going to do right now. Normally, for the split FGC layout, you'd have the jump button here. Instead, I'm going to use a smaller button cap, and I'm going to put it, I think, here. But the truth is, according to Capcom Pro Tour rules, you're allowed to have up to 11 action buttons, and so this is an opportunity to turn this controller into the ideal shortcuts controller. Let's actually put a few extra buttons in. Since I won't be using my left thumb for jump, I'm only going to be using my right thumb for jump. I'm actually going to move a button from where there would be a jump here. I'm going to move this up here so it's nice and close to this position, and this is not going to be a direction. This is going to be my L3 button. Then I'm going to take another button here, and I'm just going to place it here, right next to my jump button, so I can just go straight from normal directions like this and pressing the button, and then when I want to do drive rush and react super quickly, I just move my thumb over here to this button here. Easy access, super easy. Alright, NihongoGamer from the future here. I actually had to call up Glyph and get some custom firmware made because, again, this is a prototype controller, so there was not an option to use what I wanted to do, but basically, as you see here, this is my custom layout, and they've made an extra option just for me, and hopefully in the future you'll be able to program your own options and actually set your own firmwares. So if I press this button, you can see that I'm cycling through the main options. This would be the normal fight pad layout, I guess the all button leverless layout. This is the one that I've had programmed for me, and then obviously you've also got the Super Smash Brothers layout if you're going to be using it for that. These buttons over here, I've set them to 3 punches and 3 kicks. And actually this is quite useful for Ken, because if he press multiple kicks at the same time, he changes into his fire moves instead of his regular shoryukens. This one in the middle is my touchpad control. I think it's set to select. So L3 is set to drive impact, and R3 is set to parry, which of course if you press it with a dash as well, you will get the drive rush. But I do find that because my thumb naturally just wants to be right here, it's in the middle of these 2 buttons. And so like when I'm just naturally holding my hands in this position here, I'm like, okay, this is the jump button. Oh wait, maybe this is the jump button. I'll do this, and I'll be like, oh no, I've done a parry instead of a jump. So this does happen. I mix this up a lot, and I would prefer if there was actually like a really large jump button here. I don't really understand Smash layouts that well, so you can tell me maybe if that's a bad idea. But I would prefer to have a large jump button here, which is obviously the jump button, and then maybe I could have these other 4 C-stick buttons to go around it for Smash layout. I will also say a few other things about this layout. The split layout isn't really working for me. I think it's entirely possible that I'm just not used to it, and that actually for a lot of people this will be much more preferable to using something like this, the standard leverless layout where your hands come in. Personally, I think my hands actually naturally come in at this angle, so having them come straight out. I've actually said the same thing about the Hori Fighting Edge. I wasn't really a big fan of the noir style layout that they were using on that, because I felt like to have your hands come straight out like this, you would actually have to your arms come like this. I feel like I have a fairly average build, and at the moment for me, I feel like if my hands come out naturally like this, they're too far apart. In order for them to be coming straight forward like this to fit on the glyph, I would have to have my shoulders closer together like this. So I feel like in theory, this controller looks like it would be more ergonomic because your arm just comes straight out. But actually, since my shoulders are actually out here, having them come in at this angle feels more natural. So to be honest, I don't really feel that strongly about having a split pad layout. I don't think it really helps me at all. It is amazing to be able to have drive rush on a thumb button down here. And again, look, you can have pretty much as many buttons as you want. You could put shortcut buttons over here by the action buttons. You could have all your shortcut buttons here on your left thumb. You could even have one on your pinky finger here, or have one right above here. You could even consider that if this is not your main controller that you use in tournaments, this could be just your extra controller to have at home with tons of extra buttons that you can program to be like the perfect labbing machine. There's so many possibilities, obviously, if you have this many buttons. But that leads me to basically my final conclusion with the Glyph controller. If we're going to have a controller with this many buttons, it makes you kind of wonder why we don't just drill holes like a giant computer keyboard. Like, obviously, there are some areas where you need to have a very specific angle. Like, if this were completely straight, you wouldn't be able to have one right in the middle row here. But it feels like if you're gonna go and make a controller which is modular like this, that you can configure, reconfigurable controllers, it feels like this whole board should just be like 400 holes where you can just put any keycap anywhere. Or even better, if they had like magnets on the bottom of the sockets so that you could just place them in exactly the right place to, you know, fit your hand. Because one of the things about an ergonomic controller is that you no longer need to worry about the spread of the controller. It's just like, does my thumb go here or does my thumb go here? I've got really small hands or I've got really big hands. It's very customizable, but at the same time, you're still kind of amending a Smash controller to have the flexibility of adding all the extra buttons that many of these new leverless controllers are coming out with, like having a shortcut next to your right thumb, or having a bunch of shortcuts next to your left thumb, or having some extra directions and jump buttons up here instead of just having left, down, right. You have a sort of WASD control, but also with a jump button on the right. Obviously, a large number of options, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. It's a prototype, so it's difficult to knock it too hard because a lot of things will probably change. I do hear that they're going to have the screen up here, which will make programming a lot simpler. Once the software is actually available, you'll also be able to plug it into your computer and just remap the buttons and put them anywhere you want. But I would say that the only thing that worries me at the moment, I think I have to use it in Nintendo Switch mode and then use the Wingman adapter. And when you play on PlayStation, A and B are backwards and X and Y are backwards on a Nintendo Switch. So when I use this on my PlayStation, I use the Nintendo Switch mode, which I go into the Wingman FGC adapter, and then A and B and X and Y are backwards, and I don't know. I feel like that's a very simple thing that would bug a lot of new users. Anyway, that's all for today. I'm quite excited about making some more videos on this in the future, mainly because I've never actually had a controller designed like this for Smash. I know that other controllers like this exist, but I've never had one myself. So do look forward to when future videos come out. But until then, check out this video next if you want to look up more stuff about controllers, especially leverless controllers. They're all the rage right now, and there are so many varieties. Hopefully I'll get a chance to try them all in the future. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Comment, like, and I will see you all real soon.